What's going on, everybody? This is Joe.
And Amy.
And we are back with another episode of Detroit Become Human. Last time, a lot happened, but we were playing as Kara and Connor, sometimes at the same time, or basically at the same time. Kara and Alice were able to get away, despite the fact that Connor and Lieutenant Anderson and others had shown up to search for her, because that was one of their cases, was to seek her out because her owner, Todd, had reported her assaulting him and conveniently left out the fact that she was defending herself and a child, but regardless. Right. And so Connor ended up chasing Kara, and Kara escaped with Alice across a busy freeway or roadway, which was terrifying.
Very scary.
Right. But they both made it across safely. And that was the end of that episode. So now, as we're starting off, the game has asked us if we want to do a survey. If this takes us, out of the game into, the internet or something, then we'll just cut right back in when the game is back on, because I am not really interested in going through all of that. But we'll see.
Great. Let's start. Would you consider having a relationship with an android that looks like a human?
Yes, no, or don't know.
Me?
It's in game, so yeah, they're asking you.
No.
Do you think that technology could become a threat to mankind?
Or
correct. Or even a romantic relationship. But yeah, that whole, whether it's sexual or not, but do you think
I'm
that
also married, so
do you think that technology could become a threat to mankind? Yes, no, or don't know.
Become a threat?
Correct. Like Terminator situation, right? Where robots rise up and try to kill us.
Probably not.
If you had to live on a deserted island and could only bring one object, what would it be?
A book, a cell phone, pen and paper, a console, or an instrument.
Those are the only options?
Right.
It has a little arrow.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then when you get to the top or bottom, they gray out.
A console? What is that?
A console, like a video game console.
How would you be able to use that on a desert island?
It says a deserted island, but it says if you had to live on a deserted island, not if you were stranded on one. So I assume it means you're living in isolation, but you still have access to, electricity and etc.
No, none of these. Can you answer it?
Well, I guess it means, it's saying if you have to live on a deserted island. So if I'm extrapolating that it's saying if we bring a console that it means that we have electricity, then I would say a cell phone, only because it means that we could charge it and still speak to our loved ones somehow.
Yeah.
Right? If it's, we wouldn't have access to the internet necessarily, although I guess you could assume that as well. But I guess I'll, arbitrarily assume that we don't have access to the internet. But even then, a smartphone with some capacity to connect to the internet would be nice as well. But in general, a cell phone to be able to speak to your family and friends would be nice.
Okay.
So, because even with a pen and paper, it's not like you would send letters, right? You're on a deserted island. So, yeah, I'd say a cell phone.
Okay.
Right? Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay.
Do you consider yourself dependent on technology?
I mean, I consider things to be pretty boring when the power goes out.
Sure.
We kind of sit here and go, okay, so what should we do?
But we've got, board games and stuff that we could, light a candle or...
Yeah, but you'd have to light a lot of candles to get enough light for us to really play board games when the power goes out, which is why we never do.
Sure. Well, read books. We've done that.
Same thing.
Yeah. So, yes.
So, I mean, maybe that's because we don't have candles that we would be able to use for that, like other sources of light. And there are plenty of other ways that you could light something without electricity.
Right.
So you're not dependent on that, but are we personally dependent on that because we don't have those things? I guess.
Right. Well, and I
Right.
mean, the other thing is, right, this is a game that sometimes is played by streamers. And so, is a streamer dependent on technology? Yeah. Like, for their livelihood, etc. I mean, look, during the pandemic, right, when we were quarantined or stuck at home and self-isolating, I worked from home thanks to technology.
Right.
If not for technology, I would not have been able to do that. Arguably, if not for technology, I wouldn't have my job in the first place of what I do in general. So, yeah, I would say we're very dependent on technology for that reason.
Yeah.
What technology do you most anticipate?
Anticipate.
Yeah, to come in the future. So, androids, flying cars, space tourism, or brain-connected devices.
Androids.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
Because I think... Go ahead.
flying cars is like a whole thing.
Yeah.
Because now you need to make sure that people are following driving rules in the sky, and there has to be like all these extra things put in place, and so that's going to take a while. Space tourism also going to take a while, I think. It takes a lot to train to go to space. Not to mention that if you have health issues, you shouldn't be doing that and things like that.
Right.
Brain-connected devices are probably a close second to androids. But, I mean, there are androids now.
Correct. And I would
They
say...
already exist.
Right. I would say the issue with flying cars and space tourism, they're one and the issues are one and the same. Fuel.
Yeah.
How do you get a flying car? You'd need vertical takeoff and landing, right? Because you're not going to have a car coming in and like,
Right.
teaching people how to land like a plane lands.
Yeah,
that doesn't work.
That flying cars would be so involved.
Correct. And space tourism, like, you're just burning massive amounts of fuel to try to get those spacecraft to get through the atmosphere, right? The resistance of the atmosphere,
and it's just
over
for the
and
sake
over
of
again.
tourism?
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
The few flights that we do to space now, and by we I mean, the world governments, they do so for research purposes. There's like actual reasons behind it, and so there's grants and money involved. But for space tourism, sure, if you're rich enough, right? I mean, there's
Right.
just, whatever his name is, Bronson or whatever, right, who's talking about wanting to go to space for the hell of it and probably has enough independent wealth to be able to afford it. But
Right.
to try to, like, have the money to...
Make it a thing where, like, people are like, should we go on a cruise or should we do space this time?
Right.
Like, yeah, in order for it to get like that, it would be a lot.
Yeah. But androids, I mean, there's a lot of technologies now with, like, predictive text and things like that. So just using that type of a scenario combined with, I mean, even automated phone systems these days are sophisticated-ish enough to hear what you say to it and either know the appropriate next response based on a list of possible responses, or and then so like combining that with predictive technologies in terms of like what would someone of this particular area typically respond in this type of a scenario. Okay, that'll be the response that I get. And that can only get more sophisticated because they've made it so that technology can learn as well.
Yeah.
And learn from, okay, you said this, that doesn't make sense. Okay, I'll log that response doesn't make sense for this, but now I'll know for the future. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with androids.
Do you believe in God?
Wow.
I do.
Okay. It's a yes.
Would you let an android take care of your children?
I mean, I question is a little bit vague. Because I think, like, would you let an android take care of your children? How well do I know the android? Are they my specified android, like in this game?
I would assume,
or
yes.
is it just a random android? Because just like a random person, I wouldn't let them watch my kid.
Sure. I took that as, yeah, like,
They
you know,
have,
Kara,
you know, enough
would
of
you
a
let...
relationship with you or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
You've purchased Kara. She works in your home. Would you let Kara take
Yeah.
care of your children?
Yeah, because what I see in that scenario is that there's just as much of a, if not less, of a possibility of an accident of some kind or whatever than with a human taking care of your kid.
Sure. And they would know, like, appropriate medical responses to any
Yeah.
situation right off the top of their heads, because they're essentially a search engine at that point, and they can do a scan of the body to determine what might be wrong, you know, choking hazard or something like that, like what is going on with the child that they are in distress. And okay, now that I've identified the problem, here is the appropriate solution according to my searches or whatever.
And,
Okay.
and the problem with that, I think, would end up coming down to interpersonal skills. Does the android have the ability to be warm, make the child feel better when something goes wrong from an emotional standpoint? Are they able to hug the child and comfort them in that situation? And if they're not, then the answer's not no. It's just yes with a caveat.
Sure.
You know, it's you know, an android is not replacing the parent in that scenario either. It's just, you know, watching the kid when you go run errands or something.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a little bit, this question is a little bit vague to me.
Sure.
But
yeah.
just because you can't really make it more detailed.
Sure. Right, unless you wanted,
There's too
like...
many, like, ifs and whatever, variables.
Okay.
But yeah, like, so I would say yes to this. Because, again, the answer is not no just because you're afraid of those specific things. It's just you wouldn't let the android take care of your kid constantly.
Right.
Yeah, you know?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
How much time per day would you say you spend on an electronic device?
1, 2, 4, more, or don't know.
Probably more than 4 hours
Agreed.
for us.
If you
Yep.
needed emergency surgery, would you agree to be operated on by a machine?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because presumably you're not a test subject, right? Like, they've done it before, right? It's that particular, like, this is the heart surgery bot, right? So if you need heart surgery, like, this is the machine to do it for you.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
I mean, they do that now with, like, the Da Vinci or whatever, where it's, like, this machine thing. And I guess the surgeon, like, operates it.
Right.
But, like, there's a certain amount of programming that goes into whatever it's able to do, I assume, and stuff like that. It's not just like, oh, the surgeon's, like, wearing metal arms or whatever.
Right.
It's like an actual machine is doing the surgery, and the surgeon is too.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
and I'm not saying that a surgeon would have to also do it. I think if it was just a machine, that wouldn't necessarily lessen or worsen the amount of mistakes that would occur in surgeries and stuff like that.
Oh, interesting. No, I see. I would be of the opinion that, sure, I would be happy to be operated on by a machine, but that machine better be watched by a human who knows what's happening.
Yeah.
Because if the machine runs into a problem and doesn't know what to do, now am I laying open on the table while the machine processes or has an error? You know, like, like someone else needs to be in that room to be able to either step in or reposition the machine or whatever.
Different than actually controlling it throughout the entirety of the surgery.
Agreed. Yes. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, otherwise, I guess it's, it specifies if you needed emergency surgery, right? Mm-hmm. This isn't like, okay, I'm getting a hip replacement and it's a scheduled thing. I know when it's going to be. Let's go and get it done. Okay, a machine's going to do it, sure, because it's like an open and shut kind of a thing that happens relatively frequently. But it's like, there's a piece of shrapnel in my chest. It needs to be removed and safely without nicking any arteries or anything,
right.
Or I could bleed out and die. Do I want a machine to do it? I'd still say yes, but again, if there's not somebody else in that room monitoring it, I'd like to know why,
right.
So, okay.
Do you think one day machines could develop consciousness?
Don't know.
I'll agree with that.
Say,
yeah, that's fair.
Because my gut response is no on that. Just based on what consciousness really is. But if you want to get loose on the definition of what consciousness is, I think it's possible.
Sure. Well, because, they talk a lot about in this game about, like, AI producing art. Mm-hmm. Or, whether it's writing a book, like we heard about in the last episode, or right. Painting, like with Marcus. Mm-hmm. A machine can know basic painting techniques, mm-hmm. right?
Sure.
And if they know basic painting techniques, arguably they could utilize those basic techniques with a combination of colors that I guess they could provably search whether that combination has been used before or not. And
or
so
whether it's like aesthetically pleasing and like will come up with like a better result in terms of whether people will like it or whatever.
Right. So arguably that could occur where like original works of art could be produced by AI. Mm-hmm. But then the question is that considered consciousness? Like they're still doing it based on knowledge parameters as
right.
opposed to like, so, I want to paint today. Like that's not right. a decision the machine is making. It would still need to be told, hey, using these parameters, paint something, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So I agree on the don't know aspect. Like it depends on how consciousness is viewed or defined right. in any given scenario. All right. Well, that's the last question. Let's see what happens now. Oh, okay. Survey results. So you get to see the world's answers. So, would you consider having a relationship with an android that looks like a human? We said no, but 61% of people said yes.
Wow. That's so many.
Yeah.
That's disturbing to me. That's so many.
We were among the 19% that said no. There are there's a larger percentage of people that said don't know than said no.
Wow. Okay.
Do you think the technology could become a threat to mankind? 68% said yes.
Wow. It could become a threat in
hands of people with bad motivations.
Right.
As opposed to on their own. In
that situation, it already is.
Sure. Yes. Fair. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I guess if you look at it that
codes or whatever.
Sure.
But from a standpoint of androids murdering people, I don't really think so.
This was the question about living on a deserted island and what would you bring with you. We were we gave the second place answer of a cell phone. First place was an instrument at 29%.
Cool.
Very interesting.
I find that interesting after the 60% of people want to fuck androids question.
Do you consider yourself dependent on technology? 75% said yes along with us.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, this game came out in, I think, 2018 or so. So, even starting
So
from
it's
then
pretty
until
new.
now.
Yeah, it's pretty new.
Yeah. Well, and you can tell based on the graphics and stuff.
Yeah.
What technology do you most anticipate? 35% said androids. You said brain-connected devices was a close second, and sure enough, 31%.
Yeah.
Then people think space tourism, and then flying cars.
Wow. Okay.
Do
I don't
you?
know, I probably would have swapped those two, but I still think, that those are like way far behind
Yeah.
androids and brain connected devices.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, the difference between androids and brain-connected devices was 4%, whereas brain-connected devices and space tourism was 11% between them. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the issue with brain connected devices is fucking radiation.
And voluntary dangerous surgery. Like, you'd have to get a port of some kind put in that connects to your brain.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so no thank you.
Yes, but
and of the scenarios that I've seen where that's been discussed in popular culture,
Yeah.
there's that idea of like, okay, as an adult you get this like grafted to you or whatever you want to call it, like installed in your body, and then you can connect all these devices. But if it becomes more widely utilized, is there a discussion of, depending on what the devices are, is there a discussion of putting it on or in children? And what does that look like? And then as they grow, do they need to have that replaced with a larger one or whatever?
Right.
Can a brain grow around this device or with this device implanted in it? Or can you not put it in a child because the brain is still growing and developing?
Right. Is it the kind of thing where your body's going to reject it if you're not on medication like you would need if you had a transplant?
Right. And of course there's like ethical considerations of whether that child has given consent, even if the parent has, and like
Of course,
if they get to a certain age and they don't want it, like if
Right.
if it was implanted in the childhood. So there's a lot of considerations
Yeah,
there with
yeah.
just the concept of like brain connected devices where adults could look at that and be like, oh, that sounds cool. Then I won't have to worry about, carrying my phone around. I could just like mentally think about calling somebody and it'll call them. And it's like, no, that
sounds terrible.
right. It's so much worse than that in so many ways. So,
To me, that doesn't sound like a voluntary thing. If we're talking about brain connected devices, to me that sounds like the population has been mandated by the government to have this operation where it's being put into your brain or on the outside of your head but connected to your brain or what have you, so that you can be monitored. I don't see that as being a thing that people will think is fun.
Right. Yeah.
But that's my interpretation of it.
Okay. Well, anyway, as with anything, obviously, I mean, we're doing this on the internet, so we're doing it with the knowledge that feedback is a thing. So if you agree, if you disagree, if you have other thoughts about anything, let us know in the comments.
Maybe you kind of see an avenue that we're kind of missing, and you're like, no, brain connected devices totally would be fun, and like, here's how they would advertise it to people, or like,
right.
This is the actual concept of why it would be that.
Right.
Because I don't see the concept of why it would be that.
Yeah. All right. So on to number 6. Do you believe in God? 44% said yes. 39% said no. So it's pretty close considering.
Yeah.
And 17% said don't know.
Okay. That's probably pretty... pretty consistent with what I would expect.
Okay. Would you let an android take care of your children? 49% said yes.
Okay.
The next highest percentage is 27 with don't know.
Oh, okay.
And then 24 with just a flat no.
Yeah. Okay.
So almost half of everyone questioned said yes.
Yeah. And then the other half decided whether they were going to say they didn't know or no.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
How much time per day would you say you spend
And I think
Sorry.
I think the fact that they waited until this point in the game to ask us these questions
Sure.
greatly influences these answers.
Sure.
I really do think that, because I think prior to anyone playing this game, if they were just taking this survey on a normal day of their lives, I think these answers would be very different than they are now after playing through this game as androids, as various androids, and seeing these very specific, very emotional, very compelling stories being told through the eyes of these androids.
Sure. No, that's actually a fantastic point. Let us know your thoughts. I love that. That's amazing. How much time per day would you say you spend on an electronic device? 61% said more than 4 hours.
Yeah.
Now, again, realize the demographics that are
Right.
being asked this. They are only people who can own a PS4 and Detroit Become Human.
Right.
So they have to be able to afford the console and the game and a television to watch it on.
Right.
So-
and electricity.
Sure.
And live in a country where they have access to those things, not
And-
just the money for them.
And the free time to have gotten this far into the game.
Right.
I mean, to be fair, it's 2 years later, but I don't imagine that, that the majority of these answers were received recently as opposed to shortly after the game came out when
Right.
it was, big and hyped up or whatever.
Yeah.
But still, so there's a bit of a demographics discussion to be had for why that number is so high.
Right.
But that is a lot.
Yes.
61% of the players of this game spend more than 4 hours a day on an electronic device. Now, could that mean that
Which
they
really
are...
just means that if it's mostly this, then they're done playing this game probably in like 2 days.
Well, but in general, sure, gaming or watching YouTube or streamers or whatever, that's considered being on an electronic device.
Right.
So
I mean, they
entertainment
said
of any
kind of electronic device. I mean,
television, cell phone.
I mean, our fucking oven is electric.
Sure.
Sure. The half an hour that I spend making dinner, I'm doing that. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and like I said, my job requires me to be on a computer 8 to 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
5 days a week minimum. So that in and of itself gets me over the 4 hours.
Yep.
Because I'm doing my job. I'm still getting paid. You show this to a particular type of person, and they're going to look at this and be like, see, those damn kids are always on technology, wasting their lives away. But no, I'm doing my job and
Right.
getting paid and crossing this threshold just by doing that.
Right.
Does that mean that I don't then come home and do these recordings or these whatever? No, not necessarily. We still stream and do recordings and etc.
Right. So
and
you're
that,
way over.
well, I was going to say, but that alone could surpass 5 hours.
Right.
But
Yeah, on a weekend like today is
Right.
when we're playing.
we're filming this.
While we're filming this and
Yeah.
playing Detroit Become Human.
Yeah.
We're probably going to end up spending, a couple of hours doing this and a couple of hours watching TV.
Yeah.
And, I'm going to, like I said, be spending a half an hour making
Cooking.
dinner.
Yeah.
And, we'll probably check our phones on occasion
Yeah.
throughout the day just
Yep.
to make sure that, we don't have messages or whatever. And, if we film anything with the camera, I mean, that's an electronic device.
Sure.
I mean, the freaking lights being on.
Yeah. I mean, they say what would you spend on an electronic device? So
Right.
I don't think that really
they're
counts,
not
but
really counting lights. But my point is not having electricity completely changes your capabilities of what you're able to do.
Yeah.
What you're able to spend your time in your day doing.
yeah.
So, I mean, if the power goes out and it's out for more than 4 hours, then the answer to this question doesn't get to be more.
Right.
Because it's now the answer to this question gets to be, the 1 hour before the power went out when we went on the computer and then the power went out.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Very, very interesting. And then the next highest answer after 61% was 4 hours. After 61% of more was 4 hours with 22%. Then 2 hours with 8%. Then don't know with 7%. And then 1 hour with 2%.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Number 9. If you needed emergency surgery, would you agree to be operated on by a machine? 71% said yes, along with us. Next highest is 16% with don't know.
Oh.
And then 13% with no.
Wow. Okay.
Again,
that's pretty striking.
It would be. But to me, looking at this, my thesis or my hypothesis looking at this is that the older generations would not necessarily would be more willing to say no to this. So like
if your parents were taking this survey,
but they're not because they don't own a PS4 and Detroit Become Human. Correct. So that's why, again, this, in my opinion, this is a demographics thing as well. Right. Be aware of the people that are being asked this question, but maybe I'm wrong. I have no way of knowing.
And in reality, I mean, that's what it's going to be with any survey.
Yeah. Well, and that's, the
sample is important.
We've learned something here today, folks. When you read results of a survey, try to educate yourself as much as possible about that survey. A headline is really flashy. 71% of people questioned would agree to be operated on by a machine. Yes. Of people that own a video game console. And
what people?
Exactly. So make sure that you're aware of where your survey results are coming from. You cannot look at these results and say, wow, 71% of the U.S. population would be operated on by a machine if they needed emergency surgery.
Population.
Sure. Sure.
No way.
Yeah, that is definitely not what we are doing here. Realize the demographics. And by demographics, I mean like socioeconomic status as well as age.
As well as just education on the subject of its, that it's speaking of. So like, I happen to know, and probably most people do, that surgeons now use machines to do surgeries.
Right.
But somebody who lives in a third world country might not have access to that information and might not even think of that as being something that would make sense.
Right. I guess, but my point was then they wouldn't be playing this game and answering.
No, but my point is if they were taking this survey just as a survey,
sure,
their answer would be different than ours.
Yeah. We're just talking about different things because what I was saying was only like, for this survey alone, my mind goes to realize the socioeconomic status of the people answering this question and realize the likely age or age range of the people answering this question. That's all I mean in terms of like these actual numbers of these specific percentages.
Okay. Of people playing this game.
Correct. Okay. And number 10, do you think one day machines could develop consciousness? 66% said yes, and then tied no and don't know at 17%
wow.
each. And we said don't know. 66% of people think yes. I struggle with that because I would also lean more towards no. You and I, when we do our jar review series, check out our Geek for All channel, links in the description. Hey, while you're here, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell. Anyway, but on our Geek for All channel, we review stories on Jar every Thursday, or most Thursdays, so keep track of that. But we tend to agree on a lot of things, and when we disagree, it's obviously never contentious, but it's like getting to share differing viewpoints on things. But I agreed with you 100% on this, that my initial reaction was to lean more towards no, and then if you think more about it, you're like, all right, I guess I just don't know. Right. Because it's not a yes at that point, but it's not, you can talk yourself slightly away from no which just leans into the don't know middling territory
Yeah.
there.
Again, I think it really depends on what you want to consider consciousness to be.
Yeah.
And because a machine doesn't have a consciousness, but anything can be made. So you can take the components that make something up and take and assemble those components and end up with an item that you've now created. I think what this question is really asking is, do you think that this created consciousness is the same
Right.
as an actual human consciousness?
Right. Or would it, in that way, would it necessitate you creating a new word for what it is?
Right.
Because if the best word for it is that it is consciousness, but it is still not up to the level of consciousness, then a new word would need to be created for this new technology,
Right.
so to speak, or this new technological phenomenon in and of itself.
Yeah.
And so you'd need a new word to describe it, and until you could, you would have to call it consciousness because that's the closest thing.
Right. Now, if I had studied Webster's dictionary definition of the word consciousness
Sure.
before taking this survey, then I might be able to answer it more definitively.
Right.
But I didn't, and I don't plan to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think what this question is really asking, if you want to kind of read between the lines of it, is taking the things that make up a consciousness and sort of designing those components and then assembling them together. That finished product, is that actually a consciousness?
Right.
That's, I think, what this question actually is.
Yeah.
Which is a lot deeper than what it actually is.
Sure. You know, it's super interesting to me. I guess can we be done with the quiz or the
I think
quiz,
so,
the survey? Okay. I am.
I hope you had a nice experience yesterday. It's good to see you again.
Thanks for blowing up our spot, lady. We played this yesterday and today. Thanks. Well, and yesterday she called us out at the beginning and was like, it's nice to start the weekend with Detroit. So it's like, yes, we get it. We're playing it early on a Saturday, and now we're playing it again on a Sunday. Stop judging us, Mom! Anyway.
Oh, boy. It's already begun.
What I was going to say is, this is not what I expected this episode to be. I thought we were going to continue. We're done. That's it. I mean, we've been doing this for
That's how long it took?
It's been almost 40 minutes. Like,
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
How did we get that far in time?
Because we had actual discussions about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, we could have absolutely sat here and been like, oh, that answer, that answer, that answer, that answer. Okay, those were the answers and those are the percentage. But like, actually talking about it and taking the time to analyze it makes sense. I like that. So...
Yeah, I mean, I think that's necessary. If the game is going to have us take a survey,
yeah,
I think it's important to sit there and analyze
The most important thing is not to live,
the data.
but to have a reason to live. That's a quote from Jean Genot, a French writer.
Thanks? She looks very confused now. It's like, you were the one that started talking. You know?
That's a really cool quote.
You like that?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's absolutely just the end of the episode. I would love people's thoughts, opinions on anything. Do you agree with our choices? Do you agree with the majority's choices? Do you disagree? Have you ever played this game before? Like, you know, I mean, as with anything that we do, like, have you played the game before? And after watching, if the answer is no, after watching this, would you consider playing the game? Right? Like, we are sitting here saying, oh my God, this game's so good. Wow, we love it. Like, it's so interesting. And after, like Amy said, after playing through so much of the game already and getting to this point, now they throw this survey at us. Do you think that your answers would have been different before?
Detroit
And
was an
also,
underground railroad, a route for slaves escaping into Canada during the American Civil War.
and also, do you just in general, what do you think? I mean, I somewhat lost my train of thought, but I was mostly at the end. What do you think of that? And does any of this make you want to play this game, especially maybe to see different scenarios? I mean, that survey, you've seen it all now, but a lot of the other kind of modules that we play, right, when we get to the end of those modules, it shows you things that we didn't unlock because of the different paths that we did or did not choose. So, this game is one that could warrant a second playthrough. Not that we're going to do that,
right,
but it does also mean that even if you're watching us play it, it doesn't automatically ruin the whole game for you, because there are definitely still
a lot of different things that you could do.
Correct. So, anyway, that's it. This was an interesting episode, although not gameplay wise, because there wasn't any, but the reading these questions, thinking about them.
I hope you're okay today. I know sometimes things can be difficult, but I'm here for you.
But
It's cool. Yeah. I'm good.
Thanks for asking. Well, there's the other voice line that she has where she's like, "You look tired today." It's like, "Fuck you." So mean. Like Amy said, I'm doing fine, thanks. So yeah, please feel free to leave your thoughts down in the comments below. As I mentioned earlier, I was somewhat joking, but I'm 100% serious. Please don't forget to like and share and subscribe and ring the bell. Check out our other channels down in the description box below. We have links to our socials as well. All that stuff helps us out a lot. It helps you keep in touch with us. You can check us out on live streams over on Geek for All. All those things are super important. We really hope that you're enjoying everything that we're doing here on this Geek for All family of channels. And from us here, I have been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.